My dear friends, what? That's not fair. If you're the oldest child, you know exactly what it feels like to say those words. It's a known fact, and parents try to deny it, but it's completely true, that they're typically strictest with their oldest children, and then as their other children grow up, they tend to mellow out a little bit. So the oldest children are constantly saying as they grow up, well, wait a minute, well, why are you letting her get away with that? You're letting her eat that for herself. You're letting him do that. You're letting them those kinds of grades. That's not fair. You let me do that. Oh, and then you see that other facet of life as well. In a few hours, a lot of you are going to be sitting in front of your TVs and saying, well, why aren't you letting them get away? If you're no defense, that becomes interference. When you're driving on the holidays and you get where you're going to send the officer, then it's your job. Wait, me, don't you let him get away with that? Why are you arresting me? Probably all of you look to the heavens at least once or twice and say, really? You're going to let that politician get away with that? All that corruption, all those lies, you're going to let him get away with that? Really, God? You're going to let those soldiers in that country get away with those crimes against humanity? Really, God? You're going to let him, the liar, the cheater, who does all these things wrong, you're going to let him get away with that, whereas I have to struggle? That's not fair. Well, if that's you, and you're constantly going to God saying, that's not fair, Jesus has something that you need to hear today. Expect judgment. And part of expecting Jesus' judgment, it has two parts. Number one, remember his grace. And number two, trust his justice. And part one, remember his grace. And here in John chapter 5, the context of this is Jesus is in the temple courts of Jerusalem, and he had just healed a man who was completely lame, like he couldn't walk. And Jesus goes to him and says, get up, or if you want to see my man, raises up, and he carries his mat with him. And this always happened on a Sabbath day, right? So the Jews believe that the Sabbath day means you can't walk. Okay, so what happened was the Pharisees, the high religious leaders, well, they saw this man carrying his mat, walking, and says, well, no, you can't do that because you're carrying your mat, and that counts as what? Who told you can do that? What's going on? And the man says, well, Jesus, he clearly has some sort of authority because he gave me my ability to walk back. I can walk now, and he told me to carry my mat. And so the Pharisees then go to Jesus and say, what are you doing? You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to work on the Sabbath. You can't heal on the Sabbath. And instead of apologizing, Jesus actually doubles down and says that he is the Son of God, which they understood to mean that he is equal to God. And then Jesus takes it a step further and says, actually, not only am I equal to God, but those who obey and believe my words, my teachings, my preaching, they will live forever. They will escape death forever. And that takes us to what we see today. Jesus actually takes it a step further and says, a time is coming. In fact, the time is now here when those who hear my voice are going to be saved from death. They are going to be brought to life. How is it? Right. I mean, you don't see people just rising from the dead all the time, once in a while, but not all the time. No, what he's talking about is what sometimes we call the first resurrection. The Bible teaches that every single human being is completely spiritually dead. And maybe you talk about some person, right, where they're walking and they're talking and they're really dead inside. Well, that's actually spiritually true of every single human being. Right? We walk and we talk, but naturally we are completely spiritually dead because God originally created us to have fellowship and friendship with Him. Right? And that's what real, true life actually means, to have fellowship and friendship and trust in God. And by nature, no human being has that. We have all lost that. And so by nature, every single human being is spiritually dead, unable and really unwilling to know God and love God and trust God and to obey Him. We are all spiritually dead. But Jesus says that he can change that through his words, through his truth, through his preaching. He can actually change someone's heart and bring them to love him and trust him. Well, Jesus actually takes it a step further then and says, well, in the same way that God the Father has life in himself, meaning he doesn't, no one made him, no one created him, he just is. Well, then he actually, gives us a really profound truth that Jesus Christ is equal to God the Father. He's not God the Father, but he's equal to God the Father. This is what we call the doctrine of the Trinity, right? One God, and yet Father, Son, Holy Spirit, three persons, but not three gods, one God. And Jesus is kind of talking about this and says, I am equal to God the Father. I am God. And in the same way that the God the Father is eternal, he was never born. There was never a time when he was not. He is the creator. I, the Son, am also the creator. I am uncreated. I did not have a beginning. I just always have been. I am. And so then he applies that to justice. It says in the same way that the Father is the judge of all the earth, right? And we have this idea, right? And when you die, you have to go before God, right? Well, Jesus says, well, that's me too. You're going to have to stand before me in the after your final day and give an account of your life. And then Jesus says something fascinating. He says, I am Son of Man. Now your translation here, it says, for I am the Son of Man. The Son of Man was a title given to Jesus, talking about, there's going to be this great judge coming down from the sky with God the Father, who's going to judge all of humanity. And Jesus constantly referred to himself as the Son of Man. And actually, when you look at the Greek, there's no the, right? There's no the. It's just Son of Man. So really, it seems like he's saying that he's a Son of Man, which is a Jewish way of saying a human being. And so Jesus is kind of actually here in front of these Pharisees talking about this really divine, powerful truth that he's a human being, right? He has flesh and blood, and yet he is the true God of heaven and earth, standing before them. Now, why does that matter? Why does he make that point? Well, because even though human beings are completely dead, spiritually completely lost, completely destined to burn in hell forever, and deserving nothing from God, God in his infinite mercy loved human beings. And he didn't want to even think about an eternity without human beings. And so God himself actually became a human being and became the perfect human being, the human being that we all should have been, and followed all the rules that human beings are supposed to follow. And then he went and died in the place of every single human being and took the punishment that every single human being should have suffered, the wrath of hell itself on the cross. And actually, think about this, God, the eternal one, the Holy One, died so that human beings like you and me would never have to die. We wouldn't have to face the punishment that we deserve. And so Jesus is saying that he has come, the judge, to take his own punishment so that human beings like you and me don't have to. Now, some of you are thinking this. I say this every Sunday, right? That's the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, that you are completely forgiven. You are brought to spiritual life to trust in Jesus. All of this is something that you don't earn. You have earned none of it. It's all given to you as a free gift. And I talk about this every week, but it's so important that you understand that. Why? Because if you don't, you will constantly be going to God and saying, why are you letting him get away? That's not fair. Think about it. Do you want a fair God? Do you want a God who gives people what they deserve? No, it's easy to look at the person who murders people and say, well come on, punish him. But you don't understand that. Whenever we hate someone, whenever we refuse to love someone, whenever we look down on someone, we are just as guilty of murder in God's eyes. You can look down on the people who are unfaithful to their spouses, but we need to understand that whenever we have a lustful thought, whenever we are just disrespectful or unloving or argumentative with our spouse, we are just as guilty of breaking God's commandment to love and be faithful to your spouse. I mean, you could say, well, those people that scam people, those millionaires who hoard the wealth, they're guilty of stealing. True. But if you have ever been lazy for your boss and not work when you're being paid to work, you have stolen time from your boss. All guilty. Thank God that he's not fair. Thank God that he doesn't give people what they deserve. You don't want a fair God. We deserve to be punished forever. And he willingly punished his own son in our place. Thank God that he's not fair. But at the same time, I think there is a valid question. Does that mean that God doesn't care about it? Does that mean that God doesn't care about the atrocities and the crimes against humanity and all the horrible things that happen? Well, the answer is no, he does care. Part two, trust his justice. I don't know, maybe some of you in this room, maybe your Lutheran tripwire went off when you saw this quote from Jesus, where he says, those who have done what is good will rise to live, and those who have done what is evil will rise to be condemned. Maybe some will think, well, I thought we were saved by grace. I thought we were saved by not by works, but by what Christ has done for us. And now you're telling us that, well, if you do good things, that you'll go to heaven. I haven't done good things. What's going on here? Well, you're right. Jesus very clearly teaches that you do not earn a single thing for him, that you are saved. Your place in heaven, your status as a Christian is not something that you earn. It's given to you as a free gift, all because of what Jesus did for you on the cross. But think about this. Are there any Christians here who are maybe frustrated that the good works that they are doing for God, you seem to go unnoticed? You're not doing it to be noticed. You're not doing it to earn anything, but it seems like the good works that you're doing for God because you love him just don't seem to do anything. Now, maybe spouses here are trying to show love and respect their spouse. They're trying to put love in their marriage, and it just doesn't seem to do anything. It seems like God and their spouse doesn't notice. Maybe the parents here put this love and energy and attention into their children. Their children don't even notice it, and it seems like God doesn't notice it. Maybe the Christians here who are trying to tell people about Jesus, their friends, their neighbors, their homes, it just doesn't seem to be working. It's not going anywhere. The good things that they're doing just seem to be going unnoticed by God. Well, the truth is, he does notice. He absolutely notices. And he loves it. All the good things that you do for him, he loves it, and it brings him joy. And on the final day, the good works that Jesus is talking about, the good works that you have done for him in faith because you love him, are going to be recognized and acknowledged by God himself. All the bad things you've done are going to be completely forgotten. They're put on Jesus. You don't have any of those anymore. God only sees the good things that you do. And on the last day, he is going to embrace you and say, well done. And remember this too. Jesus is talking to who? He's talking to the Pharisees, right? The Pharisees were, again, the major religious leaders of the day. They were experts in the Bible. They loved God's rules so much that they added their own. And instead of fasting one day, they would fast, completely go without food for 2 days a week, and they would make sure everyone knew about it. And they would say these long, drawn-out prayers in front of everyone, so everyone would see how holy and devout and religious they were. Jesus saying, those works that you do, yeah, everyone thinks that they're great, but you know what? I see past that. And you're not doing it for God, you're doing it for yourself. You're doing it so that everyone can see how great you are. And in the end, all of those empty, bad works are going to be exposed for what they are. And this is a warning. This is a warning to the religious elite, those who are trying to earn God's salvation by all their good works. They're gonna go to hell forever. Not because forgiveness isn't available, of course it is, but it's because they think that they can earn God's salvation. They can earn heaven, and they say, well, God, you're really good. Give me what I deserve. Well, that's exactly what we'll get. But that still doesn't answer the question. What about the evil things that happen in this world that seem to go unpunished? Well, what about the fathers who abandon their children, abandon their wives, and go off and marry someone else, leaving their family in shambles, and they seem to escape justice? They get off. Oh, what about the parents that abuse their children? The husbands that abuse their wives? And then, yeah, maybe there's separation, maybe there's not, but they just get away with it. There's no punishment. What about the politicians who lie and cheat and clearly don't care at all about the people that they're supposed to serve, yet they get more power, more power, more power, and nothing happens to them? Well, what about the drug dealers who funnel poison into vulnerable communities and they get rich off of it? What about the scammers, people who cheat people out of their money, and they get rich off of it, and they're able to get away scot-free? But what about the pastors who preach lies in Jesus' name and tell people false things that are probably going to send them to hell because of their wrong? And then they get rich off of it. Again, the richest pastors in America, a guy named Kenneth Copeland, he's evil. It's clearly he's evil, and yet he has a private jet. Where's the private jet? I don't know. You know what I mean? Where's the justice? Where's the punishment? We'll take it a step further. Well, what about the dictators who have killed millions of people like Adolf Hitler? And he committed suicide so that he would never have to look the people in the face that he destroyed. Well, what about the school shooters who massacre innocent children and then they commit suicide so that they don't have to face justice? What about the Muslim terrorists who, again, they go and they kill themselves while they kill all these people again? They don't have to face justice. Are they going to have to face justice? Yeah. There is no escape from God's justice. They may not have to face justice here on earth, but every single one of those things, every single one, is going to have to stand in the throne room of God Himself, and they are going to have to explain exactly why they did what they did. And it will not be pretty. And you can absolutely trust that God is just as angry as you are about what has happened. And they are going to suffer. The doctrine of hell, we always seem like, oh, that's a scary thing. I don't want to talk about hell. It's actually kind of comforting if you think about it. Because the doctrine of hell, the fact that God sends people to hell, means that God is just as angry as you are about the abuses and the violence that's going on in the world. And Jesus promises that there's going to be a day when all the violence, all the evil, all the horrible things that have happened in the world are going to face justice. And everything is going to be right. I want to share a book with you. His name is Fyodor Dostoevsky. He was a Russian author in the 19th century. And he himself struggled with this concept because the Russian government back then was very corrupt, and he was punished and sent to Siberia for doing nothing. I mean, they saw all these men abuse their power and abuse people. He struggled out and only got a lot of this injustice. And toward the end of his career, he said this: I believe, like a child, that suffering will be healed and made up for, that all the humiliating absurdity or human contradictions will vanish like a purple mirage, that in the world's finale, at the moment of eternal harmony, something so precious will come to pass that it will suffice for all hearts, for the comforting of all resentments, for the atonement of all the crimes of humanity, for all the blood and shed, that will make it not possible to forgive, but to justify all that has happened. My friends, that's what we believe. We believe that in the end, what we have to look forward to, the justice and the perfection and the pleasure and the joy that we will have in the new world will be so good that you will not only forget the pain that you had to suffer to reach it, but will actually say it was worth it. Therefore, let vengeance belong to the Lord. Let vengeance belong to the Lord. Let God take care of it. If He promises, He will. And instead of saying, well, why does He get away with that? Rejoice in the fact that Jesus was punished for you. And God has actually allowed you to escape justice for your sins. And trust that there is no sin that will go unpunished. Either the sin is put on Jesus or the person is going to be punished for their sin. In the end, justice will prevail forever. Amen.